Hello and welcome to episode 406 of the Stacey West podcast. My name's Gary. I shall be your host, guiding you through this evening's frivolities, and joining me for the Lincoln City party is Emily. How are you?
Hi, Gaz. Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you. I'm doing all right. How are you?
Yeah, do you know what? I've embraced winter today.
Mm-hmm.
I've lit the fire.
Well, I'm not proud of this. I've put the heating on.
Yeah.
Yep, I've put the heating on. It is miserable. And this is the first podcast that I've started where I've had to put the big light on.
Yeah, I do. I've got the big light on as well because my ring light broke a minute or two before we went live on deadline day. So I've got the big light on now because if I had it off, I was even fuzzier than usual facially. So
that's not just your beard.
Not just the beard, no, which I am really perturbed because I shaved it off not long back and it's grown back even grayer on both sides.
Oh, is that how it works?
Well, I didn't think so, but it appears so, and I'm hoping that is a sign of my on-growing wisdom. But yeah, no, it's not been a great day. Not been. I mean, it was nice and sunny earlier. Went into Louth, had a coffee, chilled out, and then was going to do a run, but obviously can't when it rains. So I did a sit instead, which was really good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I love doing a sit. That's one of my favourite weekend activities to do. Is just have a sit.
Yeah, just a sit, a chill. Yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, the weather's been absolutely miserable, and it was a funny weather day yesterday as well. Going to Burton, we managed to avoid the downpours, kind of waiting in the car until it stopped, and then nipping in and out the pub when it calmed down. So we luckily timed everything okay weather-wise with our trip to Burton yesterday. But the weather didn't dampen the result, did it, Gaz?
You're like a professional. It's like you've been doing it years, isn't it? It's I'm not only seizing on the segue before it was even presented, but coming up with a written headline as well. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to ruin it slightly and backtrack because I just wanted to apologise. I want to apologise to everybody who didn't get a preview of the Burton game this week. One thing, all sorts of things conspired. We had Chris Lamming playing in goal for Market Raisin, and I'm led to believe scoring a goal for Market Raisin with a big clearance. So doubtless Michael Scabala will be on the phone soon. We've got Ben enjoying another holiday. He seems to have more of those than London Polly. I've got a dog burst in to the office to come and see me as well as we speak. So yeah, it was just one thing after another. So there was no preview show, I'm afraid, but we will be here to review the Burton game. The dog's now gone out of the office, so that was a nice little interlude.
Yeah, always so nice to see Charlie.
Yeah, he's just been out for a walk and he's just come bounding in, opened the door himself where he's not meant to come through. It's like that moment, you know, on the BBC where the guy's live on the BBC and the door opens and the kid comes waddling in. Yeah, it's a little bit like that. So Burton Albion, you were present at the Pirelli yesterday.
I was, yeah, and I do always like a trip to Burton. It's one of the relatively local ones for me, being based in Nottingham, so it's only a short drive away, and I do like going there. I like that you can get a proper pint before the game. So yeah, we nipped into a pub on the way and had a nice little drop of Pedigree, which is a nice beer, better than the normal Carling or something we tend to get when we end up in stadiums. But yes, went to the game yesterday. Actually, while I was in the pub, met one of our listeners. Had a lovely chat with Phil. So if you're listening, Phil, hello. It was nice to meet you. I did get all embarrassed and I was shoving a bacon cob in my mouth as he came over to speak to me, which is all a little bit awkward and difficult. But it's always nice when listeners come over and say hello. And I got a Mars bar out of a listener coming to say hello last weekend. So that's being on the Stacey West does have its perks.
Look at that. You're even foreshadowing a question for later in the show as well. Yeah, well, we're not worthy. So moving on to the Burton game. First of all, I think the starting 11 was of interest. And look, over the last couple of seasons, let's be honest, the starting 11 has been a case of, oh God, who's injured this week? Who's not playing? And at the moment this season, it's very much who is playing. We knew for a fact there was a couple of suspensions, but there wasn't in my head a concern over the fact that Towler and Street were out. It was more an excitement about who might come in. Adam Reach was pretty much a shoo-in. It was then whether it was Jacko or Tom Hamer, with Sonny Bradley coming back in. Obviously, as we know, Jacko got the nod. And also, it was very much who was going to play out wide. I think a lot of people thought maybe Oscar Thorne might get the nod, but instead, Frankie Okawankwo went out on one flank, House in the middle, and on the other was Rico Hackett. So actually, the big changes were not changes that were enforced as particularly by the suspensions. They were changes that were kind of made with the game in mind in terms of Jacko and Ben House.
Yeah, they absolutely were. And I think it's nice to kind of, the players that came in are players that you could argue should be in the starting 11 every week. We haven't got this problem of, players that, might be on the bench coming in and that they're a temporary fix. House had such a good game yesterday, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about when we go into the review, that you can easily argue that he should be playing in that role every single week. And we know how good Freddie Draper's been there. But yeah, I think there's no doubt that House in particular was brought in for that pressing game that he has. And yeah, I think Jacko, again, we know that he's just a really solid defender. There's no arguments from me there to see him come into the side as well. And I think, Okoronkwo played really well against Burton in that cup game. So perhaps he got the nod based on his performance against that team then.
I think there's a distinct irony that two of our best players this season, in my opinion, are playing in the same position, Freddie Draper and Ben House, and they've both been given their opportunity in that position because the first choice going into the season, Jack Moylan's got injured. So whereas at the beginning of the season we're terrified that injuries might disrupt things, in this instance we've actually suffered the injury, and what do you know, it's almost like we've come out of it going, well, how many more 10s do we need? Rico was playing there at the end of last season. Jack Moylan is brilliant there. Ben House, Freddie Draper has converted there fantastically. We know Tom Bayliss could play more advanced if need be. It's almost as if we wish we could have 2 or 3 number 10s on the pitch.
We need more than 11, don't we? If that's
we do, but it's horses for courses, isn't it? And the game yesterday, Burton did like to play out. There's a misconception that they're a direct side, and whilst they are able to go direct, Gary Bowyer's Burton play out certainly more than Dino Marma's Burton ever did. And I think that energy from Ben House was something that we wanted from the start. And I think one of your notes, we kind of compare notes beforehand, and one of your notes was fast start, and that kind of plays into the team selection, I think.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And we know the team, they like a fast start, or they like to try and have a fast start. And I think we've seen that, with some of the early goals or the way that we've started most of our games. And I think this game was absolutely no exception. We started really well. The press was really strong. And it was in the opening few minutes that Ben House had 2 real clear-cut chances where, you could maybe argue that he should have scored.
Yeah, the header at the time, because I watched the game with my dad. Obviously, I'm watching all of the away games with him at the moment. And as soon as the header kind of happened, I sort of turned to Dad and said, "That's a really hard chance," because although he's clear, he's kind of 10 yards out maybe. He's got to change the trajectory, and it was more of a floated ball than a whipped ball. Sometimes if the cross is hard, it's got the power for you to just direct, and as soon as you direct, you don't take the power out. But there was no power in it, so he's got to try and get power behind it and direct it. That's really difficult. And I think players that are able to do that on demand are probably the sort of players that are playing, up top in the Championship or the Premier League. It's no disrespect to Ben House. And when I saw that chance with some comments on social media about, God, Ben House is not a striker. And part of me almost wants to say, do you know what? No, he's not. I think he's proven that with how hard he presses. He's not an out-and-out number 9. We wouldn't want to be going into this season with him as an out-and-out number 9. He does score some goals, but it's more about his overall game as well. But it was still a half-decent chance. The second one, I think, was offside, was it not?
Yeah, it was offside. That first chance, from just to go back to that, in the ground, it looked like he'd headed it straight down the keeper's throat. He just went straight at the keeper, easy save. On the replay, the keeper does have to move. He does have to move and he does well to catch the ball rather than put it away. So actually, yeah, I agree with you that it's a difficult chance, and House did better looking at the replay with that chance than kind of watching it live. The keeper did quite well to catch that one. But yeah, the second chance that he had was it was flagged as offside, which is probably one of those where you're like, oh, it's actually a bit of a relief that it was offside, because that was a clear cut chance. It came to him completely free in the box, and it was quite high, wide, and handsome, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah, it was. I mean, we can chuckle about it now because we've won the game and it was offside. But yeah, I always say with chances like that, James Collins puts that away. And actually, probably as a striker, you still miss as many chances as you score. I thought it was promising that Ben gets into those positions. I've said this a million times on the podcast, and my mate Pete will shoot me down for saying this. But Danny Cowley always used to say, I'd rather strikers were in positions to miss chances than we weren't creating chances. So the fact that we've got 2 balls into the box, nice and early, quick start, I think was promising. And that's something that has been a real part of our game. I think I did a count through all of our games. I think there's only been 2 where we haven't scored in the first half. Off the top of my head, I can only actually think of one, which was Wimbledon. So we might have scored in the first half of almost all our games, but obviously Wimbledon was one that we didn't score in. That was not something that we had to fear, because 20 minutes on the clock and we had scored a goal, and it was pretty much identical, I think, to the goal against Notts County in the Cup, wasn't it, for Bradley? Just corner, loses his marker, scores. I mean, it makes it look really simple.
Yeah, simple as that. And we know the amount of work that goes in behind the scenes with our set piece coach and our goalkeeping coach to practice and work on these set pieces. And that is why we are so prolific at scoring from them. We've talked about it on this podcast before, that even when maybe we don't score from the kind of the dead ball, the corner, whatever it is, it's often recycled, and then we'll get a chance off the back of that. But it was simple. It was a really great corner from Bayliss, delivered it really well right into that danger area in the penalty box. And yeah, Sonny Bradley just got free from his marker, ran in front of him, header, bang, goal, 1-0.
That's the analysis that you want, isn't it? Header, bang, simple. From a devil's advocate point of view, though, the defending's not great. If that's against us, you go, how the hell has the ball got to that point in the area without somebody getting on it? And maybe that's a testament to Tom Bayliss's delivery, which I put it in my article today. I stand by it. I think Tom Bayliss's dead ball ability is as good as anybody in this division, bar none. And I've seen 2 clubs now where they've raved about a certain dead ball player. Charlie Webster for Burton, we've seen him twice. Who's the lad that come on for Bolton? Might be Josh Sheehan. Going on about how they're a dead ball specialist. Anything around the 18-yard area is going to be dangerous. I think Tom Bayliss is every bit as good as anybody at this level with the ball, with the dead ball.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we see it when we get a corner and he's trotting over to take it. You think, here we go, here's a chance. And when he stands over the free kicks with Rico Hackett, I think both of them, Rico's got a good dead ball on him as well. So the 2 of them line up and they do their little dummy, and actually you don't mind who's going to take it, really. But yeah, Tom Bayliss, his dead ball is excellent, and he's just been an all-round good player for us so far this season. I'm delighted with how he started.
Yeah, new contracts as well. Now, we talk about game state. After that, probably the game swung in the home side's favour. I think I really like Charlie Webster, and I don't want to appear sycophantic to away fans who might tune in, but I always like to look at the opposition and say, which of your players do I like? Quite like Lofthouse down one of the flanks, but I really liked Charlie Webster. I thought Burton played some nice stuff. It wasn't. I've used the saying on the podcast before, all thrust, no squirt. Perhaps a little bit like that, in that they were really nice outside the 18-yard area, but not a lot of dangerous box entries. But I thought they were a tidy side, and I think we'll see much worse teams than them this season. And once or twice, George Wickens called into action.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, Webster, he was involved in everything. He was really their playmaker, was involved in so many moves, kind of going forward, passing the ball around, breaking up play, even, winning those niggly little free kicks that are really frustrating as a an opposition fan who he's being given against. But yeah, he controlled their play for them, and they were playing well. You know, they dominated most of it. The final 10 minutes of that second half, whilst I didn't feel we were under so much pressure, I didn't feel sort of stressed or anxious or worried that we were going to concede, actually. But it felt a long 10 minutes. It felt a long 10 minutes because they had a lot of the ball. They were moving it about really well. Wickens made a couple of good saves. I think there was one that came across from a header. It might have been from Shade, I think, who sort of headed it across, and Wickens had to kind of get down quick to parry it away. So he did really well again there. But I think, you know, and it's probably something I should be summing up this review with rather than doing it kind of in the first half section. But I thought that Burton were a decent team, but I think their final ball let them down. I think they didn't have that cutting edge. Never really felt like any of their chances were really going to come to anything. And I think that's partly down to them, like I say, lacking that cutting edge, but also down to us and our resilient, strong defensive performances that we know as a squad we can pull out of the bag when we need to.
Yeah, and I think that was typified by one moment. I think it was actually before our goal. It was their first main chance where I think a corner's come over. It's been, the guy's gone down the right-hand side. I think it might have been Shade, actually, and his efforts kind of been parried away. But at the back stick, then there's Okawankwo blocking kind of on the line. And I think that typifies what's good about us at the moment. Because, look, if you look at the stats, we could sum it up plenty of ways. You know, like box entries yesterday, Burton were ahead of us. XG was 0.8 something, I think, for both teams. You know, it had mid-table draw written all over it. But we had that little bit of quality in the area, and we probably just had that slightly bigger desire to, as Michael Skubala puts it, defend the cage. And it was, for me, it was that moment from Okawankwo and one in the second half from Conor McGrandles. And they're the ones that stand out because they're not the centre halves. The ball gets blasted into the area, you expect it to be Sonny Bradley or Adam Jackson getting on it. But when it's a striker or a wide player in Okawankwo's instance, or a central midfielder, you kind of get that impression that, yeah, it is everybody all for one. And I think that's a massive improvement from December, January last year, where, you know, we couldn't block for Toffee. You know, Leighton Orient, where it was 3-2, I think it was Barnsley when it was 4-3. You know, when there was goals going in from low XG, it just feels like we've stepped up a little bit. Whether that's the change in personnel, and that would be really detrimental to Pordy, who was excellent, but obviously Sonny Bradley coming in may have done that, or maybe it's just going to the 4 at the back. I don't know, but it feels to me more solid. And like you, there was no point where I was going, could be 2 or 3-1 this.
No, absolutely not. I think we know what to expect from Lincoln City now, and that is, you know, a strong defensive performance, because we've seen it time and time again this season. That's almost been the story of our season, whether it's been, you know, holding on to a small lead as we did yesterday, or against Northampton, or, you know, I know we nearly did it against Bolton. It still hurts, but we nearly did it then. Plymouth, when they were piling, you know, they were coming back and we were conceded a couple of goals, we still held out. We know how to do that now. We know how to do that, where, you know, the comments have been flying around, and I've said them as well. Last season we would have lost that game, or last season we would have drew that game. And this season it's a different story, and a very happy one.
It's just a kind of pepper that with some numbers. We've actually faced more shots than anybody in the division on 101, and there's only Plymouth on 98 who are more than 90. So 101 shots against, 39 blocks, 597 defensive duels, top of the division, 364 interceptions, top of the division. We're 4th in the division for aerial duels as well. Sadly, fouls, joint top, yellow cards top by a mile, red cards top by a mile. But I think all of those numbers kind of underline, you know, that kind of positive defensive attitude, which is what Sonny Bradley had to have when he found himself grounded with the ball in his chest and every man and his dog wanting to have a little kick at him. for a moment, and you'll be too young to remember this, I'm sure, it reminded me of Macclesfield, March 1998, the Battle of Moss Rose, where I think Barry Richardson went down, and then it was just everyone was kicking everybody. There was a handball in there. There is no doubt whatsoever that at one point the ball strikes his arms, but they're always in a position where he's trying to get them away from the ball. For people who are listening at home, I've just done a position where Sonny Bradley's arms were, and it looks like I'm holding on to some sort of fairground ride. I think he probably saved himself from any punishment there by lifting his arms out of the way, because bear in mind, Conor McGrandles against Bolton, when he went down and had his arms over the ball when he was fouled, that was given as a foul. So I think Sonny Bradley's done really well. But would you feel aggrieved if it was the other way around and a penalty wasn't given?
I probably would have felt aggrieved for 5-10 seconds. You know, that in that moment that you stand on your feet and you're yelling for a penalty, and then I probably would have gone, yeah, that would have been harsh. Actually, would have been very unfair to be given a penalty for that. It's not a penalty. It's not. I don't see. He ends up on the floor, and I cannot see what else he can do to get out of the way, quite frankly. And I do remember I don't remember the Macclesfield incident, but I have seen videos of it. So I do know what you're talking about. But there's absolutely no way that he can get out of the way of it. And actually, I thought it was quite in a situation that's quite frenetic, because people were kicking at him basically because the ball was right in his chest. It was very calm and composed, and he sort of knew exactly what he needed to do, which was keep his hands as close to his body as possible. And then at one point, he was actually putting his hands up behind his head, you know, as if you're relaxing on the beach, except he was laid on the floor being kicked. Put his hands behind his head to really kind of demonstrate, I am doing everything I can to get out of the way of this ball. So I take my hat off to him, kept calm and did what he needed to do to make sure that nothing silly happened. And he could have easily actually got a bit rattled because the boots were flying in. And I think there was this tiny little, right at the very end, a Burton player did get a boot on the ball and it did kind of clatter off his face. He could have very easily lost his rag there, but he didn't, which I think, you know, it's a real demonstration of the kind of a game that he had yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. I get the impression that Sonny Bradley is not the sort of player who will get many yellow cards for dissent, which, given last season's centre-half being suspended as much as he was, occasionally picking up yellows for dissent. And I'm not one to draw comparisons, but I like that cool and calm kind of persona that Sonny Bradley shouldn't have, looking like a man who fights UFC or in bare-knuckle cages for a living. And also those sort of moments, we've seen a couple of them, because there was one against Northampton, wasn't there, as well, where the ball was up and everyone was chesting it like it was a balloon. But I think, again, it's that we keep talking about defensive rearguard, but it's that kind of scrappiness, that desire just to do things fairly despite the bookings. I think that's become part of this game this season. Now, my fear was, after the break, that we would see another game like Northampton, another game like Bolton, another game like Mansfield, albeit with 11 men, where it really was, how long can we hold on for this? Either we can or we can't. And I thought they came out quite lively, and I thought that they tried to turn the screw early doors in the second half.
They did. They came out how they ended the second half, because, you know, they were dominating. And I said that last 10 minutes felt a long, long 10 minutes, but then they came out exactly the same. But again, that same was, I didn't feel threatened, really. Never really felt like we were going to crumble, but they did come out strong. They came out fast. They tried to play it around, tried to break us down, but of course they weren't able to.
Now, actually, in the 15 minutes at the beginning of the second half, shots from us, none. So no XG, 32% possession. Burton, 67% possession, but actually only 2 shots, and actually only an XG of 0.16. So whilst the perception, certainly watching at home, and I don't know what it was like, obviously watching in the ground, the perception was that, wow, it's been a good start from them. We feel a little bit under the cosh here. In actual fact, it really was that possession without a purpose. It really was that very few touches in the box. And that's as much, I think, down to our management of the game as it is anything, because in the comments, there's been I can't find it now. Toothless in front of goal from Paul Stalabras. He said that, and we said the same thing about Mansfield. We said the same thing about Reading. And I'm just beginning to wonder, actually, the common denominator here, is it that those teams are toothless in front of goal? Or is it actually that we are so good that even when teams have got possession, and I know this is obvious, and Chris will go on about PPDM and all this, but maybe actually the common denominator here is not that they're bad, it's that it's just another example of how good we are defensively.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I think the same goes for the Northampton game. I think I remember wanting to message our group chat saying Northampton can't score for S. But I didn't dare, just in case they did, and I didn't want to jinx it. But same again. And you're right, we are the common denominators there. And, we talked about Wickens making a couple of good saves in the first half. I can't remember making any, real stunning saves. In the second half, really, which again is testament to how our defense plays. And I think it's worth, I'm sure there's I was thinking about this when you were running through your stats and your numbers a minute ago. I'm sure there's, and I'm going to show myself up by not knowing exactly what it is, but thinking there is a statistic about Wickens making the most saves in the league or something like that. You can probably correct me if I'm wrong there.
Well, I can double check it while we pad for a little bit.
Double check while I pad for a bit and make a point that you might then come back and say that's not actually the point. But, maybe our kind of defensive stability comes from how he's improved from last season to this. If the ball does break through our defense, he's having a blinder of a season and is making saves that perhaps last season he wouldn't have done. We've talked about his improvement on this podcast before. So perhaps that plays into it as well. His role in that defensive line.
Yep. I mean, you've padded beyond what's needed. 26 saves from George Wickens this season, which is 4 fewer than Luca Ashby Hammond at Plymouth, but so second best. Per 90 minutes, 2.91. With reflexes, sorry, he's not there. Prevented goals, third, 1.84, which is not quite the same as saves, apparently. So yeah. I mean, he is standing out. And some people will say if your goalkeeper's doing well, then actually that's a sign that your defence isn't. But when you're top on interceptions as well, that's more of a sign that maybe your midfield isn't. I mean, I don't know what there'll always be a plus side. For every time you say the defence are playing well, someone will say, well, the midfield should be controlling things better. Burton didn't actually have a shot on target in the second half, according to the stats. They did. The block from McGrandles, where he kind of came across, their boy cutting down the left-hand attacking side, cross the area, smash McGrandles in the face, but it's a block. So it's difficult. I think looking back at the time, I thought that's been a good second half, whereas actually there was 14 shots and only one of those was on target, and that was just in a B crew, which we'll come on to. So
I think it's late. I was just going to say, I think because they were dominating so much, I think in the ground, it felt like they were having a good game. And that may just be because I was in the seated section. And I can see that my dad's put a comment about this. We had neck ache because we were just looking towards George Wickens' goal for what felt like the majority of the second half. So you feel like want to see some more action right in front of where the Lincoln City fans are. Which obviously we didn't get. So it kind of one of those where I think the way that the game feels when you're there is probably different. That should be a whole other game state when you're there. Different game state to what it looks like on paper.
Oh, it does. I mean, it was 65% possession for them, 34 for us. So it's probably a fair assessment. And you having said that, I remember very much going to Stevenage a couple of years ago, and I had one view of the game that we were awful, nothing's changed, blah blah blah. Bear in mind, Michael Scabala, it was his first game. I mean, it was harsh as anything, but I'd been drinking some really bad lager. No pedigree for me. It really was fizzy water, but I'd had an awful lot of it, if that counts. And I remember Chris kind of on the message at the time going, "That's not right. We've done this right. This has been better." So yeah, it is very different when you're at the game, which is why a podcast works when there's one of us that was there and one of us that wasn't, because then we give both opinions to the listener. But I think that we will both agree on the next opinion. How did Freddie Draper not make it 2-0?
I'm not sure. I mean, it was as close as you can get it. He did everything right in trying to get it into that bottom corner. Just pulled it ever so slightly too far, and it rattled off the post, didn't it? But again, another excellent example of Ben House pressing, which led to Burton coughing up the ball in a very dangerous position when they were playing it round at the back. Slid it into Draper, and he hit the post. And I mean, there's no doubt if it had been 2-0 at that point in the game, that would have absolutely been game over. But I think, the subs coming on, Draper included in that, I think that really did lift us. Those subs lifted our performance. We got a bit more into the game, had a bit more attacking play. Abikwu had a couple of runs, couple of chances, very vague penalty shout, him running into the box. I don't think it was a penalty. It just looked like shoulder to shoulder to me, and the defender got the better of him there, but he looked lively. And I think Draper was a really good outlet coming on. He gave us a different option to actually win the headers and keep hold of the ball up the field. So, yeah, the subs changed the game, and Freddie Draper really should have probably made it 2-0.
The XG for that chance was only 0.13. So apparently, what's that? Around 1 in every 6 times that goes in. So Fred didn't ought to beat himself up. But like you say, great pressing from Ben House. And actually, I thought Fred looked more of a threat than James Collins had. And that's no disrespect to Collins. I think sometimes you find it difficult to get into a game. And I thought he found it a little bit difficult to get into the game. He didn't feel difficult breaking the advertising hoarding after Rico's cross sailed over the top of him. But I would imagine that there might be a fine coming through for that from the club, or he might have to pay for a new advertising hoarding, because you shouldn't really be kicking them. But I like that level of frustration. And I thought he was on when Abikwu put the shot in, but it can't have been Collins, can it? Oh, no, it was when Okawonkwo hit that one just over the bar. I think he was offside anyway, and Collins was in the middle, and he was absolutely furious. So, we got our first glimpse of Justin Abikwu, who fits a certain physical profile that we seem to be favouring at the moment. Big. Mm-hmm. It's very much the old Keith Land of the Giants. Promising debut for him. I'm going to have to say that penalty shout would have been the softest penalty I'd probably seen anyone given since Sammy Smodic's dive in the 3-3 draw. And his shot perhaps showed a little bit of naivety. At the end, we were a couple of minutes from 90, and he's driven a long-range shot that's never going to trouble the keeper and just basically given possession away, but again, he's a different prospect. And like you say, I think the subs did give us that little bit of, not stability, but gave Burton a little bit of something different to think about, because actually Burton's passing got quite lax in the last 15 or 20 minutes. I thought they were giving the ball away more. They began to look a little bit more frustrated, lack a little bit of quality. And I think that's because we could bring so many fresh legs on just to keep the pressure up.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. It was nice to see Abikwu. I agree with you. I think it looked promising. He didn't have an awful lot to do, didn't have an awful lot of time to show what he can do, but nonetheless got on the ball a few times, made himself a bit of a nuisance, with his physique. There was one moment where Sonny Bradley, kicked it, one of those kind of have it moments. I think it went so high in the air, and Abikwu kind of brought it down and flicked. That was quite a nice little touch from him. But I agree with you about the run and the shot that he had, in stoppage time. I wonder if he was caught in two minds, because he picked up the ball sort of on the break, and we're all thinking, go for it, run. And he didn't. It was one of those slow runs with the ball, a few kind of step overs, cutting inside. So I wonder whether he was in two minds of, I'm going to try and hold up play here and see out the 1-0, and then got to a crunch point where he thought, I'm going to have to do something with it here. Yeah. And had a bit of a tame shot, because I was all ready for him to burst forward, and he didn't. It was a lot slower than I thought. So I wonder if there's a little bit of game management in there from him, which I'm not going to argue with him trying to do that too much. We should have done that better in the game that shall not be mentioned. But nice to see him come on. Nice to see his attributes.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I hadn't thought of that before. He's probably got so far down there and thought, shit, I don't want to lose the ball here. Let's just smack it at goal and hope for the best. And it didn't cost us. We got to see even Vartholomew come on, but for the grace of God and an inch away from his leg, we could have seen him go off with his leg in two, because towards the end it was innocuous at the time, but it was the second, what I would term it as a horror challenge from Webster. At the time, in real time, thought, well, there's nothing in that. How on earth have we got the free kick there? And then you look back and think, ooh, he's gone over the ball. Don't think he's trying to shield it. An uncharacteristic moment, I am told, but not nice at all, was it?
No, it wasn't. And like you say, in the ground, didn't spot it, didn't think anything of it. It wasn't an obvious challenge, an obvious nasty challenge, but seeing the replays, it is a bit naughty. It is a bit of a naughty challenge. And I think that some of the things that I think maybe have saved him there are he's gone over the ball, but he's not made contact with Vartholomew's standing leg. So, you know, I mean, it's by the by, really. But yeah, you can see it there. It's not his kind of planted leg, so perhaps it doesn't quite look as bad as it actually is. And Vartholomew just gets up. He just gets up. And
you know what,
maybe if he made a meal of it.
That don't look good, does it? And I think that's one of those instances like the Ellis Chapman sending off against Cambridge a few years ago, where the still does look worse than it is. But for me, he's not looking at the ball there. He's looking at Vartholomew. And I'm sure he's not that type of player. We hear it all the time, but it just didn't look good.
Yeah, maybe if Vartholomew had made more of a meal of it, which, you know, we don't like to see when it's against us, do we? When things like that. But maybe if he made a little bit more of a meal of it, then maybe, you know, we might have seen another colour card come out there. But yeah, nasty challenge wasn't picked up by the officials.
I'm not sure that it was that he actually connected. I think that's probably what's done him. I think if he's connected fully, I think that's the end of him. Right. With that in mind, we will go to a break, but we will not do it for a couple of seconds to satisfy my need to go at an even time, which was 37 minutes. Right. Sorry, Emily, I jumped into that, didn't I? I didn't say, do you want to sum the game up at all? I've literally just gone into it. So my apologies.
We can sum it up when we come back.
We can. Right, let's just say hello to everybody who is in the feed. David Tupling, good evening. Gerard Fox, was there a Burton preview show? There was not, my friend. My apologies for that. Answered by Red Wimp. I thought he was apologising on our behalf. There wasn't Gerard. Gerard was in my year 7, so back when it was first years. When we were in our French class, we had to wear a name badge, but it was our name in French. So like, yeah, and mine was Gerard.
Gerard. Oh, I'll call you that from now on.
Whether that's all right, Ems. Who's next? Andy Brown. Good evening. John Booth. Good evening. Evening, kids. I like that. Makes me feel young. Good evening. Evening to Ollie, to Lynn, who has also got the heating on. You can tell that winter's coming, can't you? Saxelby Imp. Good evening. Flossy Tops, good evening from a damp and blustery Cornwall. Oh, do you know what? I'd love to be in Cornwall, like on a cliff top when there's a storm coming in. Like not like I mean in a house with the heating on and everything,
right.
No windows. Not actually out in it. It's not that. I didn't want to take the dog for a poo in the garden.
Sort of
trying to prophesize about Lincoln City, like the Lincoln City Antichrist. Some people will agree with that anyway. Good evening, Dean. Hope you're well. Good evening to Dominique. Richard is in. Johnny Benton is in. Flossy Tops. Had Burton been able to score goals, then we could have been in trouble. It's quite fair, I think, isn't it?
I think it is quite fair.
Stallybrass, evening, Gary and Emily. He recently broke his back, which sounds quite serious. So I hope you're on the mend there, Paul. I think that'd be PLG Spooky or Plugs Pooky. I don't know. What do you think? Plugs Pooky.
Plugs
sounds like
PLG Spooky.
Plugs Pooky sounds like a Prohibition era gangster from America, doesn't it? Plugs Pooky.
Didn't he play for Norwich?
At some
Looks
point, I think he
spooky.
may have done. Probably managed Watford. Walter likes the look of Webster. You wait till you hear about Rage Against the Machine. Honestly, they are identical. You know, again, might be showing my age. You know, Rage Against the Machine. Ems, I'm
Yes,
assuming.
yes.
Of course, you have a metalhead boyfriend. Of course. Yeah. So he looked. I think Webster and Zach De La Rocha were separated at birth, and then obviously
Yeah,
Webster would have to be cryogenically frozen for 25 years, but it's possible. Ian, great result onwards and upwards to Luton on Saturday, which I won't be at. So Paul is his name. So Paul Spooky.
Paul Spooky. That's a great name. Paul Spooky.
Yeah, Paul Spooky. Welcome,
Ready
Paul.
for Halloween?
Yeah, welcome, Paul. And Adam Ball, well, he can go to hell. So, love you, Adam. When we come back in, we were going to do a little bit of chat about Eric Ring. Then we have some questions somewhere. Where do I have some questions? Ever the professional. There's some questions on there. And then that's it. Are we ready?
Yes.
And welcome back to episode 400 and whatever it is of the Stacey West podcast. I'm too busy writing down the timestamp to do my editing. 406. There we go. 406 episodes. Unbelievable stuff. So, Emily, as I rudely cut you off without asking you if you would like to sum up the match, would you like to sum up the Burton match before we carry on?
I will do a little sum up of the match. Yes, I will. Yeah, it was a good away day, as it always is. A very hard fought 3 points, which it just felt like a very Lincoln City performance this season. And, you know, we don't run away with it and score 4-5-0 and anything like that. But I think we're just solid. And I think that is a really good place to build from. Or could continue with. You know, if we can keep picking up points in games where, you know, you can't come away from it and say, we were excellent, we were dominant, we were this, we were that, but we're getting the 3 points. That's a very, very good sign. So delighted with the 3 points. I think Sonny Bradley had an excellent game. He got all of our man of the matches in our Instagram, which if you don't follow, search for the Stacey West, find us, follow us on Instagram. Sonny Bradley had an excellent game. Ben House had an excellent game. All round good day. There we go.
Brilliant. There we go. Summed up succinctly. I dare not do any summing up to try and trump that because I couldn't beat it. But what I will say, and again, I don't want to go on about my dad, but we would normally go to Burton. I missed it last year because we were at a festival, but before that, we'd been for a couple of years on the bounce. So to recreate the away day, I took him KFC over. And to be honest, for a man who is, let's be honest, dying for wanting to be too blunt, it's amazing how he still managed to pick apart chicken with his fingers, get grease everywhere, eat it completely on his own with a smile on his face. He did remark at the end that it was a shit game. He has said that for nearly every game we've watched. It takes a lot to please him. So yeah, but it was an all-round good day, and I did it in the dry, so that's quite good. Now, I was going to go to Eric Ring, but I'm going to take a question first of all, because it kind of plays into summing up the Burton game. And I think that it's fair to just remain on this track for now. It's from Scunny Imp. It's on the wrong screen, so let me bring it onto here. We're getting close to the 10-game mark. With cup ties, we've passed that. Do you think we can read too much yet into how the league will shape up, given we've only played 3 of the top 12 and we can't play ourselves? So I think the point I would make, first of all, I think after 8 games, to say you've played 3 of the top 3 or 3 of the bottom 3, well, certainly 3 of the top 3, it would be really difficult, because if you've played one of the teams that's in the top 4 or 5 after 8 games, they've probably only lost 1 game anyway. So if you've taken points from teams, they tend to be a little bit further down the table. And as the season goes on, obviously that changes. So I think it would be difficult for us to say after 8 games, well, we've only played, because I had this discussion with Pete, we haven't played anybody who's above us yet. Well, that's because we're actually doing really well. And the teams that are above us are doing even better. And that means that they haven't lost games. And by the time you've played everybody once, that's when you get a fair look at things. I think we've played at least 2 teams, if not 3, that I would expect to finish above us in Wigan, Plymouth, and Bolton. And we've taken points from all of those. I think we've been backs to the wall with 10 men, with 11 men at times, Northampton, obviously, and Bolton. We've defended leads. I think we've started games really well. And feeds into everything that we've just talked about. Defensively, we're in a really good position. We do have to up those attacking numbers. I always talk about the difference between XG and goals scored. I think our XG is, I haven't got it on my screen now, something like 8.3, and we've scored 11 league goals. So there is a big difference there. And at some point, you think maybe that luck, so to speak, runs out, potentially. But I think we can't read too much into it, because actually we've got, this is off the top of my head, correct me if I'm wrong, 15 points from 8 games. Yep. You look like you've got the league table to the side of you, look, as well. That's excellent. And I happen to know this, last season, after the same number of games, we had 15 points. And the season before that, after the same number of games, I think we had 12 points. So we've actually started really well 3 seasons in a row. So in my opinion, we can't read too much into where we are now. But I think I put it in my write-up. In 8 games' time, then we'll be able to start maybe making some assumptions about who we have and haven't played and at what level those teams are at.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the big test is going to be that winter period, because it always is. But from I don't think we can get carried away. Certainly not. But I do think I can read into this is we're better than I thought we would be so far this season. I think we can definitely read into that. And if you want to kind of look at it as plain and simple and on paper as possible, I predicted us having a bit of a mid-table season. And we have turned up and got results in a much, that I didn't expect we would. Got points against teams that I thought would be up there. Beaten others, Plymouth, Reading, thought they'd have decent seasons. We took 3 points there. And so I think that I think we can look and see we're doing better than I thought we would. But I think you're right. The next kind of 8-10 games over that winter period is going to be crucial. That's when we're really going to see where the land lies. But the club have talked about making the signings on deadline day, bringing in those players to make sure we've got the right people in place and the reinforcements we need to get through that winter period successfully. I think even Jez George made a joke on our deadline day podcast about we're going to try and score in December this year, Gary, or something like that. So I think that's promising. So I think while you can't get carried away with the league position after 8 games, I think that you can read potential into it. That's a bit wishy-washy, isn't it? But I hope that sort of makes some sort of sense.
Yeah, do you know what? I think so. And I think another thing that I'd say is that I think we've won 7 of it in 11 since the start of the season. Looking back, winning our 7th game has always come bar, I think, the 2020-21 season. So every season back to COVID season, we haven't won our 7th game until earliest 12th of October and latest 26th of October. So and I know that there's a couple of cup games in there, but that's, I'm not saying it's just league games, but winning 7 games in all competitions usually takes us till late October. I think it was the 26th of October last season. It was Stockport was our 7th win when we beat them 2-1. Here's a great stat for you, that the last time that we'd won 7 games in all competitions before September or by September the 15th, and it's the 14th today, was 2018-19 season, when we ended up winning the title. So are we going to win the title?
That's an excellent statistic. And yes, doesn't that mean we will? Doesn't it? That says yes.
Of course there's title. Yeah. Title's coming our way. Right, we're going to go to some more questions in a minute. But first of all, I just wanted to touch very briefly on Eric Ring. Not literally Eric, if you're listening. That's not my bag. So this week a group of us got to meet Eric Ring. So the Stacey West Patreons, of which there are many who are greatly appreciated, a group within the Patreon group wanted to club together and sponsor a player. So we all clubbed together and sponsored Eric Ring. 3 of us got to go and meet him on Wednesday, I think it was. Might have been Thursday, doesn't really matter. So that was myself, Blake Hutchinson, no relation, as I always say, and Lee Curtis. And I just wanted to touch on meeting Eric, actually, because I think there's been, when I say forgotten man, he's kind of the one that one or two of the Twitter doom and gloom merchants, Andy Pearson, if you're listening, yes, that's you, want to write off at the moment. And probably I take it a little bit personally because I've now met him and I really like the guy. And when you talk to someone and humanize them, it becomes far harder not to be critical, but it becomes, you kind of, you get that rapport and you probably understand them a little bit more and you understand things a little bit more. So yeah, we met Eric, really nice guy. There's no way he's unsettled in the UK, that's for sure. He talked about being absolutely happy. He's been struggling with injury, so he said that the last week or so is the first time that he hasn't felt his quad. Described the Plymouth game when he came on and was poor as the worst day of his life, or one of the worst days of his life, was his exact words. So it was just really nice to meet him. And there are some players that you like. There's some players that are not as likable. There's only been one over the past few years that I've really disliked, Maguire. But other than that, there's some that are shy. There's some that will do the bare minimum. Eric came straight to us, one of the first in, and he was one of the last out. I think there was only Oscar Thorne and Ben House and possibly George Wickens left after him. And I really like that commitment as well. Just a really nice, grounded young man. And I've come away wanting him even more to be a success than I did beforehand. So it's not just because I've backed him now, but it's because I've now backed him and he's a really nice guy.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's great. It's great to see the kind of players engaging with fans and sponsors and everybody like that, I think. And yeah, real testament to him that you say he was first one in, last one out, and you were able to have a good chat with him. Yeah, I really want Eric to do well. I would really like him to succeed. He was a bit like Varfolomiev. He was a big signing for us. That was, there was a lot spoken about bringing in a player from overseas. We're looking in the Scandinavian market, and then Eric came in. It was felt quite a big deal. So yeah, I'd really like to see him kick on. Where he slots into this team, as I say, it goes back to that selection headache that we spoke about at the beginning of the podcast, where he comes in and displaces anybody or whatever it might be. I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. But yeah, I'd love to see him do well.
I think it will be him against Rico. And I think with this potentially being the last season that we have Rico, I'm not sure if we have an option or whatever, but I think this is Rico's last season of his contract. And from what I can understand, Eric has another 2 years of his contract after this. So this is really the season where I think he'll be hoping to get an opportunity. I think the one thing he does bring a little bit more pace and wanting to beat a player. I mean, Rico didn't really seem to want to do that much on Saturday, but he was playing on the opposite flank, so it's a little bit harder to go outside when he's crossing on his weaker foot. So hopefully, as Paul, as we now know he's called, in the chat has said, Eric will get time in the Virtua Trophy in the FA Cup. And let's face it, but he comes into the Virtua Trophy against Man United under 21s and scores twice. He's going to turn heads. So he's on the fringes of the squad. Almost certainly, and I think with the players we've got, he may have to bide his time, but so be it. Right, let's move on to questions. We had a favourite question, didn't we? We did have a favourite question. So Johnny Benton, who is watching, your question was our favourite. That's the one we're going to go to before we pick apart all the silly or the serious ones. What chocolate bar best describes the current squad? Now this Ems and I come on the feed 15 minutes beforehand usually and kind of talk over the show and what we're going to talk about. And the first 14 and a half minutes of that this time were spent looking at chocolate bars. There was no talk whatsoever of football. So which chocolate bar have you picked and why?
Yes. I did a lot of research into this. I did more research into this than any of the questions about actual football. But I have decided that Lincoln City would be a double-decker. And I've picked a double-decker because it's got layers and it's got depth to it. When you bite into it, your teeth go all the way through it. We've got depth in the squad. We've got layers of players. That rhymes. Layers of players. And, do you know what? I've just sort of said, there should have been something about Quality Street in there, but I've missed that opportunity now. But never mind. But yeah, I feel like with a double decker, we've got the hard, crunchy bits at the back. They're hard. We've got the kind of strong, tough, consistent, nuggety bit in the middle, in our kind of spine, and then we've got the lovely caramelly bit at the top that can score us some goals as well.
That's
So
like
for
Riley
me,
Towers' hair.
we're a double deck. We've got the caramel layers like Riley Towler's hair. Yes. What did you pick, Gary?
Well, I actually kind of wanted two. So the one that I wanted was Boost, just because I really like Boost, but sometimes it gives me a bloody headache when I bite into it. I think it's like a chocolate, like brain freeze with ice cream. I sometimes get that with too much chocolate, like, so that was going to be Boost. But I am going to go with Twix. Now, the reason I'm going to go with Twix is it's not the most glamorous of chocolate bars, is it? And if you've got, unlimited money in your pocket and you go to pick a chocolate bar, you're probably not going to pick a Twix. You're going to pick something that's got a little bit more to it. It's basic, but it's familiar. It's got a hard core, which I think that we've got, a really crispy, tough core. It's got a layer of Riley Towler's hair, which everybody wants. And also it's versatile, isn't it? You've got your normal Twix, you've got your single Twix or your double Twix. So, you can change formation nice and easily. You've got fun size Twix, which is false advertising. Sometimes, you grab what you think is going to be a full-size Twix and it's fun size, like when you turn up to expect Lincoln to win 3-0 and it's 0-0, or you lose at home to Shrewsbury. Sometimes you can get it with the white chocolate, where you just pick it up and you think that this is the best chocolate bar ever, but you know that ain't going to happen every week, because your normal Twix is your basic Twix. But it's also versatile. If you get a box of Celebrations, what can you get in Celebrations? Twix. We are a staple of the League One menu. We are just like the Twix is a staple of the chocolate bar menu. So I am going to say that the Lincoln City squad is most like a Twix. And we do actually have a comment.
I take that personally, Paul.
Do you?
I resent that remark.
Not going there. We'll take that off. A marathon, Leslie, your mum thinks. So your mum agrees. So yeah. I mean, she's probably saying it more about the squad than the Stacey West thing. So nice. Right, so that was a fun question, wasn't it? And it gives us a fun title for the algorithms. Now let's get on to the serious questions. What have we got left? About 8 minutes. Yeah, we'll get through. So Lee says, looking at the league table, who do you think are currently in extremely false positions? Do you have anyone that jumped out to you?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a few, and we talked about Wigan being a great team and expecting them to rise at the table. I think extremely false position, and I hate to say it, I think it's Peterborough, perhaps right at the bottom of the table, which is fantastic to see. However, they've played some tough teams. They have played some tough teams, and I don't expect them to be in the bottom four come the end of the season. So I think for me, there's a lot of teams that I kind of look at their position and think, wow, that looks either higher than I thought they would be, or they're lower. But I think Peterborough is a real standout for me. I can't see them being in the bottom four as much as I would love to see it. Can't see it happening.
Yeah, I mean, they got their win obviously against Wickham at the weekend, but in fairness, I think Wickham are terrible. They're 19th, and I think that's a fair position. I look at Doncaster, and I do wonder if that's not an extremely false position, but they've got, I think it's 5 wins, so they're up in 5th with 5 wins, but they've beaten Exeter at home, Mansfield away, Port Vale away, Rotherham at home, Bradford at home, and then the first test that they've really had, Wigan away, they've been pumped. I think that Doncaster will settle down into the mid-table. I think Bolton, they've only lost 1 this season, but they're down in 12th. I know they've only won 2, but 5 draws. Just need to find that clinical edge with all the players you would think that they really should do. I think they're probably in a false position as well. And I actually think Plymouth down in 17th. I know their fans don't tend to agree, but I just think they've got enough quality throughout the side to be a lot higher than 17th, and it may be 10th, but is 7 places an extremely false position. So yeah,
there's also Reading as well. I expect Reading to climb out from where they are.
Yeah, exactly. It's early, isn't it? Because there's teams down like Exeter and Northampton have got 3 wins, and we've only got 4 wins. And the team that are top, I think, or the teams that are in third and second have got like 5 wins. So at the end of the day, it's in another 10, 12, 15 games, you'll see 10 games rather, and we will see. Right. Imposter says, of the opposition we have played so far, which player have you been most impressed with? And he had Amici at Plymouth. Emily, anyone for you?
I was very impressed with Cozy Adubri for Bolton. I think he was their main threat, really, wasn't he? Everything kind of came through him. He looked really lively when we played them there. So that's my pick. What about you?
I'm going to go recency bias. Charlie Webster, mainly because there are quite a few that have stood out, and I've liked him, and I've liked him. But with Charlie Webster, I've seen him twice, both times in 1-0 defeats. Once when they were pushing for a win and we scored in the last minute. Another one where they were chasing the game, and I've liked him on both occasions. I think his challenge at the end was poorly timed rather than malicious. So I am, I'm a big Charlie Webster fan. I think he looks like a real prospect. He's the one I think that stood out for me the most. Quick one from Shane Clark, and I'm suspecting that our answer is going to be the same here. But are there any free agents you'd like to see us take a look at?
No.
It's exactly the same answer that I have. It's a great question, because normally I think it underlines what sort of transfer window we've had, because usually you'll get to this stage 2 weeks after the window closes and you'll think, I wish we'd got, there's a centre back, or could this centre forward do a job for us? But actually, with the loans that we took on deadline day, and whether they are kind of padding to the squad or whether they are outright first team players, however they pan out, but the loans that we've added and the players that we've added to the squad, for me, has just made this a squad that feels at the moment as complete as we need it to. And as you said earlier, Jez, I think, had commented, we want to score a goal in December. Well, at the moment, say James Collin gets injured, I wouldn't be fearful that we wouldn't have anything going forward. Collins and Draper got injured, it would be a disaster, but we'd still have Rod Street, we'd still have Frankie Okoronkwo, we'd still have Justin Abikwu, we'd still have a lot of options. So, yeah, at the moment, I'm with you. I think there isn't really anybody on the free agent list that realistically I'd take a look at. I'm sure if I looked at the free agents list as somebody that was in the Premier League a few years ago, and you go, maybe I could look at him, or Ravel Morrison, it'd be nice to have him around the squad. But I don't actually think there's anybody that would hugely improve the squad. And now, and this is a brilliant question, because it's reminded me to promote something I wanted to promote as well. So this week, Thursday, I believe, is a fans forum at the club. Not sure what time it starts. Go to We Are Imps. That'll tell you. I shall be going. We are going to a few Stacey West Patreons are going to come along. As I understand it, it's going to be really interesting. I think the last fans forum was interesting. It's no longer just people sat at a table and the same questions getting asked and answered. And just to give you a nice appetite whetting fans forum style question, Phil has said on the Patreon chat, would you like to see us leaving one attacker up front when we defend a corner? The ball always seems to get recycled back at us when we clear it. Clear our 18-yard box, increasing the pressure, just asking for a friend. I mean, that is a brilliant fans forum question. I'm not taking it honestly. It's like every fans forum anybody went to, Danny Cowley era, there was that. There was what was the one where why don't the players celebrate in front of the St Andrews stand sometimes? Why is it always over at the Co-op stand? Why do they warm up on one side of the field? So would you like to see us leave someone up at a corner?
I hadn't seen the little note at the end that said just asking for a friend, by the way. That's very, very funny. That's very funny. Not fussed. Is that a good enough answer? Not fussed, really. The way that we've been doing it is that Tendai Darikwa has been that player that's breaking out when we clear the ball from a corner. He's the one that's been sprinting to put the pressure on. And I think that's fine. That's my opinion. What do you think, Gaz?
Yeah, I think if the opposition have got their goalkeeper in the sticks, they've got 10 outfield players. They leave one back, that's nine outfield players. So if we've got our goalkeeper and 10 outfield players in there, that's 2 more of our shirts and their shirts trying to win the ball, which increases the probability of the corner being dealt with. Yes, it gets recycled, but you take one of those bodies out there and it just begins to even the numbers up a little bit more. So, yeah, I think I can understand why people ask it, if I'm honest, because it can be frustrating. And even I've done it at times. I can't remember who it was. It was earlier in the season. And it was one of the rare small players that we've got was heading back and just like, don't bother. Do you know what I mean? You get out there. If you put someone up, then they're going to put 2 out there and it takes bodies out of the box. But that's not always a good thing, because if they've got 2 out, but they've dragged one of ours out and there's fewer bodies in the box, there's still more space in the box. So there's more space for the attacking players to operate in. So I think that we just get everybody back in the box, and it's about that. Michael says it, defending the cage, which is a little bit American. But it's, you're defending the goal, you're defending the square, whatever you want to call it. And the more bodies that you get between the ball and the goal, the more chance you have of blocking something. So I think first and foremost, we think, we'll get in between the ball and the goal, we'll block it, and then we'll deal with it when it comes out. And it's that kind of how quickly you get out, how quickly you then press, and where you press to try and win that ball. But we've had a couple of good chances on the break in recent matches. A few spring to mind. James Collins missed one away at Burton, I want to say, in the cup. Dudek made a great save. We've got a big crew. We've scored a goal on the break once or twice. So, yeah, I'm all for it. I don't mind. We'll leave. Go on.
I was going to say, I mean, there will be insights and data and all sorts. We know the club use AI for set pieces and how they manage those. I'm sure there'll be all sorts of stuff that I do not understand that they use to show exactly what we ought to be doing at set pieces. So, yeah, I'm with you.
I think if we begin to drop down the table and we start conceding goals from being consistently under pressure, then I can see a need for a change of tactics. But at the moment, even though it's our traditional good start from the last couple of seasons, I think it still feels like tactically we're getting a lot right. And Michael Skubala, just to loop all the way back to the beginning of the podcast, said he was perhaps more proud of this performance than any other, because in terms of tactically, it was, they played the game plan perfectly. So while the game plan is working, I shall not shout from the rooftops, "I told you so," to anybody on social media who said Skubala out, because things can change very quickly. But while it's working, I'll just happily go, do you know what? You know better than us. When we're losing, we know better. Football fans always know better. So very good. So that's 406 done.
It is. Yeah. Big numbers.
Yeah, big numbers. We're posting big stats here on the Stacey West. Go big or go home. But but we are home. Right. Well, thank you very much, Emily, for your excellent insight. Thank you to it's 58 now, but I think maximum 75 people that spent some of their time on Sunday. It's Sunday, isn't it? Sunday afternoon. I'm losing all track of time.
Yes, work tomorrow.
Well, yeah, I did a bit today, a bit tomorrow, we'll mix it up a bit. So yeah, thank you to everybody. It was another fine Lincoln City win, a dogged rearguard action, a defender getting himself on the score sheet. 15 points from 8 games, looking up the table, not down. It could be 2024 all over again. Let's hope that we're not saying the same thing in December when we haven't scored a goal in about 6 months. Rest assured, whatever happens, we'll be here and we will be dissecting all of the action to bring you the very best cutting edge Lincoln City information and analysis anywhere on the internet. Up the imps.
Up the imps.